What if the most powerful force for transformation wasn't hidden in some remote temple or buried beneath ancient ruins, but within your own body? Throughout history, across vastly different cultures, a remarkable pattern emerges: secret traditions that discovered nearly identical methods for harnessing sexual energy, not just for pleasure or reproduction, but as the ultimate catalyst for consciousness expansion and longevity. We're diving into the shadowy world of sexual alchemy, where Eastern tantric masters, Taoist sages, and Western alchemists all converged on a startling truth: that the primal energy of creation could be consciously transformed into something far more valuable than gold. Ready to hunt for one of history's most carefully guarded secrets? Imagine standing in a dimly lit chamber beneath a Shaolin temple in medieval China. The walls are adorned with cryptic diagrams showing energy pathways through the human body. A Taoist master instructs his select disciples in the inner elixir practices, techniques so powerful they were only transmitted orally for centuries. Meanwhile, across the Himalayas, in secluded monasteries of Tibet, advanced practitioners of Vajrayana Buddhism developed remarkably similar methods. And halfway across the world, European alchemists encoded related principles in their mysterious manuscripts, hiding transformative techniques behind elaborate symbolism of metals, furnaces, and chemical marriages. What's truly mind-blowing is how these traditions, separated by vast distances and cultural barriers, independently discovered parallel techniques. As scholar Julius Evola notes in his Metaphysics of Sex, these weren't primitive fertility cults, but sophisticated systems of energetic transformation with striking parallels in their understanding of human physiology. The core principle? That sexual energy, what the Chinese called Jing and tantric practitioners termed ojas, could be consciously circulated through specific pathways in the body instead of being expelled. Through precise breathing patterns, visualization techniques, and refined neuromuscular control, practitioners claim to transform this raw generative force into subtler forms of energy. In the Taoist tradition, as Mantak Chia explains in his contemporary teachings, this process involved drawing sexual energy up the spine through the microcosmic orbit, a practice with uncanny similarities to the Indian yogic concept of raising kundalini energy through the chakras. The goal wasn't suppression of sexuality, but its conscious refinement and elevation. What if these weren't just metaphorical teachings, but precise psychophysiological instructions? Consider the ancient Egyptian hierogamic ceremonies, where pharaohs and high priestesses enacted sacred unions representing cosmic forces. These weren't merely symbolic rituals, but practical applications of the same principles: the transformation of sexual energy into spiritual power. The Western alchemical tradition, while using different terminology, encoded related practices in elaborate symbolism. Their prima materia wasn't specifically sexual energy, but rather the primordial substance from which all matter derives. However, the chemical wedding, the union of king and queen, sulfur and mercury, these weren't just about mixing chemicals in a laboratory. As researchers like Jeffrey Raff have uncovered, they were coded instructions for internal practices of transformation that often included sexual symbolism representing the union of polarities within the practitioner. But here's where the mystery deepens. These traditions didn't just share theoretical frameworks, they described nearly identical physiological effects: increased vitality, enhanced mental clarity, and even extended longevity. The Chinese Taoist masters who practiced these arts were renowned for their extraordinary lifespans. The tantric adepts of India were said to develop siddhis, supernatural abilities including heightened perception and remarkable physical resilience. What if the most powerful laboratory was always the human body itself? What if the philosopher's stone, the legendary substance capable of turning base metals into gold, was actually a metaphor for this internal transformation? But why was this knowledge so carefully guarded? Why did traditions across the globe insist these teachings be transmitted only to the properly prepared? Perhaps because, like any powerful technology, these methods carried risks when misapplied, or perhaps because they challenged fundamental power structures by offering direct, spiritual experience without institutional mediation. But here's the twist that might completely reshape how we understand these ancient practices. Modern science is beginning to validate what these esoteric traditions claimed for millennia. Neurobiological research has identified measurable effects of these practices on hormonal secretion, neurotransmitter activity, and even bioelectric fields in the body. Dr. David Shankman's groundbreaking studies on advanced meditators practicing these techniques revealed astonishing changes in brain activity, specifically in regions associated with pleasure, focus, and higher cognitive functions. What if these ancient practitioners weren't just engaging in mystical speculation, but had empirically discovered precise neurobiological mechanisms thousands of years before modern science? Consider this. When practitioners of these arts describe the circulation of light or the inner fire, they might be describing actual physiological processes involving the production and conservation of cerebrospinal fluid, hormonal secretions, and neurochemical transformations. The ancient Chinese understood the connection between sexual energy and brain function centuries before Western medicine discovered the hypothalamic pituitary axis. Even more startling is the work of researchers like Dr. Candice Pert, who discovered that neuropeptides, the molecules of emotion, create a communication network throughout the entire body. This provides a potential scientific explanation for how conscious breathing and visualization practices could actually transform sexual energy into heightened states of awareness. What's particularly fascinating is how these traditions described the process in nearly identical stages across cultures. First, the generation and conservation of sexual energy. Then its circulation through specific pathways in the body. Finally, its refinement into subtler forms of consciousness-expanding energy. The Taoist texts describe this as transforming Jing, sexual essence, into Qi, vital energy, and ultimately into Shen, spirit, a process with remarkable parallels to the Western alchemical stages of nigredo, albedo, and rubedo. But perhaps the most provocative question is this: what if these ancient sexual alchemists weren't just pursuing individual transformation, but had discovered something fundamental about human potential that modern society has forgotten? What if the careful integration of sexuality and consciousness represents not just a path to personal well-being, but a key evolutionary threshold for humanity? The implications are staggering. If these traditions were correct, we've been sitting on a goldmine of transformative knowledge, hidden in plain sight behind cultural taboos and misunderstandings about sexuality's deeper purpose. What might be possible if we reclaimed this wisdom with the benefit of modern scientific understanding? As we emerge from this journey through the hidden chambers of sexual alchemy, we're left with a tantalizing question. Could these ancient practices offer something vital for our modern world? In an era where sexuality is often vulgarized and commercialized, these traditions suggest a different path, one where our most primal energy becomes a catalyst for expanded consciousness and vitality rather than mere entertainment or commodity. The parallels between these diverse traditions can't be dismissed as mere coincidence. From the hermetic vessels of Western alchemists to the subtle channels of Eastern tantric masters, we find a consistent understanding that transcends cultural boundaries. As scholar Mircea Eliade observed, these weren't primitive superstitions, but sophisticated technologies of consciousness developed through centuries of careful observation and practice. Modern researchers like Dr. Jenny Wade, author of Transcendent Sex, have documented thousands of cases where people spontaneously experienced profound altered states during sexual encounters, suggesting these ancient alchemists may have simply systematized natural potentials within human physiology. What if what they called spiritual illumination was actually describing specific neurobiological states that anyone can access with proper training? The mystery of sexual alchemy invites us to reconsider not just our understanding of sexuality, but of human potential itself. As Mantak Chia emphasizes, the current vulgarization of sexuality represents a profound loss, the squandering of our most powerful regenerative energy. In his teachings, this misuse of sexual energy leads not only to spiritual stagnation, but to measurable physical depletion and accelerated aging. In the words of contemporary teacher Diana Richardson, these traditions offer a different way of making love that is not focused on discharge but on charge. A profound shift in perspective that might transform not just individual relationships, but our collective relationship with life's creative force. As we conclude our hunt for this ancient mystery, perhaps the most remarkable discovery is that the treasure wasn't buried in some distant temple or hidden in cryptic manuscripts. The laboratory, the sacred chamber, the philosopher's stone, they've been within us all along, waiting to be rediscovered. What other ancient wisdom might be hiding in plain sight, misunderstood or dismissed by our modern assumptions? What forgotten technologies of consciousness might be waiting for rediscovery? Join us next time as we continue our hunt for history's most profound mysteries. Loved this journey into the secrets of sexual alchemy? Hit subscribe for more mind-expanding mysteries. And remember, this exploration blends documented historical practices with speculative connections based on scholarly sources. The real experiment, as the ancient alchemists would say, is yours to conduct. What do you think? Could these ancient practices hold keys to human potential we're only beginning to understand?